So I think we're going to begin now. And as we start, before we open, we'd just like to begin with our land acknowledgement. We recognize that our work takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. We also wish to acknowledge that our head and corporate offices in Toronto and Ottawa are located on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and on the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Today, Toronto and Ottawa and all the other cities we serve are still home to Indigenous people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to meet and work on this territory.
Thank you, Alia. Good afternoon and welcome to our Black History Month panel discussion honoring the role of the Black entrepreneurs and their vital contribution to addressing the generational wealth for Black families. My name is Susan Henry, Manager of Community Investments here at Alterna Savings, and I will be your moderator for this session. I am thrilled to be celebrating Black History Month virtually with all of you today. I want to welcome Alterna members who are joining us this afternoon. Great to see you online. I also see we have many non-members joining us as well. Welcome. Let me start by sharing a bit about Alterna. We are a full-service financial institution that has been the good in banking since 1908. Alterna is made up of Alterna Savings Credit Union and its wholly owned subsidiary, Alterna Bank. As a credit union, our members are our owners. When you open an account, you purchase a membership share, which means you have a say in how we operate, such as voting for the board of directors and changes to the bylaws. We are different from banks in that our profits are reinvested back into the communities where we live and work. To learn more about Alterna, visit our website at alterna.ca. Now, participating in wealth creation for underserved individuals and communities is not new to Alterna. It has always been part of our DNA. More than 20 years ago, Alterna established its award-winning community microfinance program. The program is about addressing the socio-economic inequalities of underserved individuals. Through the program, we saw firsthand how a microloan can be pivotal in helping individuals become economically and socially engaged. These loans help entrepreneurs increase their income, which brings household stability by providing access to food, clothing, shelter, education, and helping to build assets for future security. The overall impact can lead to a reduction in poverty, improved quality of life, and self-empowerment. When we look at the macro picture, it also means that these entrepreneurs and businesses which we invest in are also contributing to the local economic growth and health of their communities and of our country. Inspired by the results of our community microfinance program, we want to share the success and continue to build towards vibrant communities. We know that the Black community is disproportionately behind the wealth gap from other countries. We also know that institutional and systemic racism plays a role and cannot be overlooked in creating the barriers that many in the Black community face. Given our leadership in the micro-lending space and the impact it can have on underserved communities, we are continuing to use our efforts to push for capital to as many Black entrepreneurs as possible to help them realize their dreams and ambition. Last September, we were invited to partner with the federal government alongside the largest financial institutions in Canada to develop the country's first ever Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund. Stay tuned for more information on that program coming soon. Statistics show us that there is a wealth gap for Black families, and access to assets and legacy creation is a challenge, but Black entrepreneurs with their innovative and creative talents can make a difference and can be part of the financial solution. But we need to create the space and provide the resources for them to thrive. With the conversation we're going to have with our panelists today, we want it to inspire us all to do our part in helping to move the dial towards closing the inequality gap and provide opportunities for the Black community in generating wealth. We are going to explore these possibilities through the lens of Black entrepreneurship. Before we dive deeper into the conversation, we have a couple of housekeeping and Zoom etiquette rules to go over. We are recording the session, so please stay in mute mode at all times. Place your questions in the chat. These are being monitored. We will have a question and answer period closer to the end, and we will do our best to try and get to all your questions. Your questions can be general, or you can direct them to a specific panelist. We are virtual, and oftentimes we may experience internet challenges. So please turn off your cameras where possible. If you are on social media for this event, use the hashtag Alterna Micro, hashtag the Black Family. Let's get started. Joining us as panelists this afternoon, we have Ryan Knight, co-founder of Afro-Canadian Business Network and president of Detailing Nights. We also have Dion Francis, founder and president of Blueprint Pathfinder, Inc. We have Ushnish Singuta, co-founder of Generation Connections and PhD candidate at Oise University of Toronto, and Melanie Campbell, board member for Startup Canada and founder and community leader of Startup Canada Peel Region. You will hear more about each panelist as we move to an individual conversation with them. So welcome, panelists. It's really great to have you all here this afternoon. I want to say I know most of you all personally and quite well, and we have worked in this entrepreneurship space, or you are a member of Alterna. So again, I'm happy to have you here. I also want to say, Melanie, we recently met, but I am looking forward to being part of your upcoming event for your International Women's Day Conference. So let's get started with Ryan. Ryan, as a serial entrepreneur, you have been in the entrepreneurship space for over 10 years. Tell us why you moved towards a social enterprise model with Detailing Nights. I remember when you were a sole proprietor with that business. And what benefits do you see that having on the Black community? Over to you, Ryan.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be part of Alterna Savings events. I feel like the credit union's always been there throughout my journey, and when we needed help with obtaining capital, learning about your programs has been pivotal to the journey for Detailing Nights. And it's interesting because the company didn't start with a social enterprise concept in mind. I mean, I remember being laid off from my job 2 weeks before I was getting married, and this was back in 2009. And then entrepreneurship became that. It became an option to control my own destiny. And so initially it was just to make money. I had a quota, $100 a day. I would go knock on doors and ask people if they wanted their cars cleaned. And it was as the company started to grow where I realized it didn't just have to grow and be another capitalistic type company. And being engaged with Mars Discovery District and learning about what a social enterprise was, we were thinking of expanding using a micro franchise concept. So we work with youth in the community, especially those coming out of detention or in conflict with the law, to teach them entrepreneurship and use our company as a guide. So they run a mini version of our company. And we chose that because I was a College Pro Painters franchisee. And I was like, if somebody can teach me to paint houses and run a painting company, cleaning cars is a lot easier. There's a lot less barriers to entry. So we found that teaching youth to start a business was right up our alley.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So you're really saying that creating wealth is not really just for yourself. It was definitely for the community, and, looking at the youth, you definitely had some impact on them. So my next question for you is, around home ownership. Home ownership is critical to the accumulation of wealth. And, I believe there is a gap between Black households and other communities when it comes to owning a home. And recently you co-hosted a home ownership seminar here with us at Alterna for entrepreneurs in your network. Why was that important? And what impact do you think owning such an asset have for Black families?
Yeah, it was definitely really important because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we don't see the link between having a home and building wealth and having a business and building wealth. And we've seen the statistics show having a business, you're able to build your wealth 12 times faster than just having a job. And then also the same thing is true with home ownership. I don't know the exact number, but it's multiples faster to build wealth using home ownership rather than renting. So options that Alterna has to use mortgaging and refinancing your home to build capital and use it for a business is something that entrepreneurs typically don't think about in our community. I know from my parents, once they paid off their house, they just sit back and are like, okay, I'm good. Don't talk to me about my house. They just are willing to settle. And a lot of times they don't think about how do you now use this to leverage and build on top of it. And I feel like our generation is starting to understand more about how to leverage capital and leverage the equity that's in your home to now amplify your growth in the community. So it's super important.
Yeah, for sure. So, and definitely we want to leverage those opportunities that, things like a home can offer us in building more assets and wealth. And that's definitely a way when we look at this generational wealth that we want to create. So what is the role that you think financial systems in bringing the financial literacy and education to the Black community? Like, what can we do? You talk about your parents having this asset and they're sitting on that. So what type of financial literacy and education do you think we need to further in our community, and why is it important?
Well, it's definitely becoming more comfortable with not just financial literacy, but just finances in general. I feel like it's not a topic that comes up at the dinner table a lot. I'm using myself as an example. When I was growing up, it didn't come about like what our mortgage was, what plans do we have to build capital, do we have life insurance, what's the generational game plan for the family. And now financial institutions, and if you're going back in time, and Alterna's been around for over 100 years. And that's what I really loved about the credit union model, and especially your office, is you try to figure out how to help the person. And when banks were smaller, that's what their main mission was. It was like when a person comes in and they may be declined, they would figure out how to help that person. It was a real community effort to say, hey, how can we help you get into that home? How can we help you understand why savings is important? How can we help you understand why maybe saving up and getting a car or using a car loan, all these different things that you don't get taught in school, the bank would teach you. And if your parents aren't teaching you, there was a place to go to get that knowledge. And I really feel like the financial institutions of today could use that old school model, the credit union model, to not just use an algorithm to approve or decline people, but actually care that if a person comes through your doors, they want help, and be there to help instead of just saying, sorry, the system told me that you were declined for your mortgage. Good luck and come back when, and they don't even tell you what to fix. It's like your credit's broken, go fix it and come back when you hit our quota. And I don't feel like that really supports the community, and specifically the Black community. And we've seen that with the different initiatives that are now trying to correct it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Education is so important. And for us, it's been very unique in the program we offer. And I always say, pre and post. So pre meaning, we got to provide that education up front. And then, after you have that asset or you have that capital, we still need to continuously provide the education. So, I'm proud that that's something that we're doing here at Alterna. And, the goal is to get more financial literacy and education out into the communities, because that's a big part of how you'll continue to generate that wealth. Moving to the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, you are co-founder. Can you tell us, what are some of the gaps that you saw in the Black entrepreneurship space that made you establish this organization?
Yeah, and initially I found when I was growing detailing nights and the youth that were coming through our program, when they would graduate, they didn't have a local Black focused business organization to tap into. And when I was trying to expand my company, we were thinking of franchising to expand it across Canada into the US. The other organizations that I would go to that were Black focused didn't have a mandate to really help businesses scale up. So we brought 7 entrepreneurs together. We said, could we create this entity? And really, it was to sit down with entrepreneurs, figure out what stage they're in, and then help them create a blueprint to grow their companies. And then once their companies do grow, start thinking about legacy building. How do you leave that asset to your family, to the community as a whole? And so ACBN has really evolved, even though we're going on 4 years old. It started with just doing info sessions and networking events so that people understood what opportunities were available. And then we started seeing trends in businesses needed help with sales and marketing and also needing help with structure and access to funding. So we would present opportunities to business owners, but they weren't at a certain baseline, which is foundational things like registration, incorporation, having your payroll, having your taxes done, just things that are really foundational. And if you're not at that baseline, then you don't qualify for a lot of these supports that are out there. And that was amplified with COVID because the federal government would put out these initiatives, and then we're finding that entrepreneurs in our community do not qualify. And it wasn't because of anything that like operational they could have done. It was really admin.
We've seen that firsthand.
Yeah. And so now ACBN shifted to capacity building. Let's get our entrepreneurs to baseline, make sure that they qualify for any initiatives that there are. And then also we'll see initiatives that there's gaps. So we're able to now create programs that fill gaps. The Black Entrepreneurship Support Program, they have a loan initiative that starts at 25,000 and goes up to 250,000. So we reached out to Alterna Savings and said, hey, we could fill the gap below 25,000 because our research is showing that entrepreneurs need loans ranging from $500 to $2,500 to $15,000, and the government was going to miss it. So we were able to put together a program that now we're able to loan out funds in that gap. So an entrepreneur, no matter what stage they're in, they have the supports there for them to be able to grow their business. And I feel like that's become the focus of ACBN.
Great. And it's really great to hear. It's important that we look for those gaps and we fill those gaps because we want to be inclusive of everyone, no matter what stage they are in their financial journey. It's important that we're all part of that. And, we go back to education. And that's the foundation of really where you guys started with ACBN, was providing that educational piece and now moving towards, the lending and the loan capital as, people, as entrepreneurs' needs and wants have increased. And I think that question sort of segue into my next. You've seen a lot with entrepreneurs, the struggles and the success. Obviously, we've seen a lot during this COVID period. But when we think of how resilient Black entrepreneurs had to be to get started or to scale, and again, especially during this pandemic, can you tell us about some of the resiliency you've witnessed?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you get calls from entrepreneurs that everybody's dealing with the pandemic in their own way. And so you see really creative ways that people have pivoted their businesses. People have completely shut down and started something new. And even though they had to shut down a business, it didn't put out the flame of like their entrepreneurship flame, their creativity, their ambition to start a company and build it and use it for like building wealth, as we mentioned earlier. So really like having deep conversations with people to understand, okay, this is where we're at. We're seeing where the world is going. There's talk of this fourth industrial revolution, getting online, making sure that we're utilizing tech. So using tech and technology becomes such a ambiguous term where you can really use it to amplify your supply chain, amplify your operations, amplify your automating your marketing. So I'm seeing a lot of entrepreneurs use technology in creative ways that isn't the general term of, oh, I'm a tech startup. It's no, I can be a service-based business, but use technology to amplify what I'm doing. People that have restaurants and now switch to online ordering, a curbside pickup, all done from your app, when it was like a mom and pop shop that didn't want to touch technology and didn't want to really pivot into the new age, and they were getting along just fine until the world got rebooted. And so now them embracing the technology and saying, okay, show me the way, show me how to step by step get online. The government, I think Shop Here with Digital Main Street was building Shopify stores for people. So we were able to support people going through that process and getting different grants and supports. So people really hungry to still keep their businesses alive is what I love to see. I don't love getting calls of people just complaining and saying, woe is me, COVID is terrible, the government is not helping me. Like, no, the majority of calls I get is people wanting to do for themselves. And that's usually my lasting message is we don't have to wait for the government to fix everything. We can do for ourselves, and we've shown that. We're showing our resilience in the way that we've kept operating, and now any government supports that come out really just are icing on the cake or amplify what we're already doing, and it's not to try and fix every single problem. We're fixing a lot of it for ourselves.
I love that. Let's not wait for the government to fix it for us. Let's just get out there and get it moving. That's really important. And you're right. I've seen so many entrepreneurs during this period being resilient. And, you know, my hat goes off to the baby boomers who had to pivot. And I was amazed at how fast, you know, they were able to get the technology piece and the digital piece up and going. And, you know, what I've heard from some of our members that it has improved their business tenfold. They're actually seeing more revenue. So, you know, entrepreneurs being able to pivot and, you know, they know why they're in this and they're not about to make it fail. So definitely, you know, that was a really great piece of advice from you, Ryan, and, you know, what we need, what our entrepreneurs need to do to move forward. I have one last question for you. And, you sort of touched on it a bit, but you know, I often say if we want to reach economic empowerment for underserved communities, you know, we must work in partnership and collaboration. What is your organization doing to sort of help bridge the gap and work towards interconnectivity?
Yeah, and you'll notice I big up Alterna Savings any chance I get, because that initial, and it didn't start with a partnership. It just started with, hey, Susan, we're starting this ACBN thing, and 100% support from the beginning. It's like, hey, Ryan, how can I help? Just let me know where to be if you want me to do workshops, what have you. And so seeing that partnership with my own eyes, it allowed me to now reach out to other organizations and say, hey, we're partnering over here, you should join. And then it's slowly just growing. And now we're partnered with 20 plus business focused organizations and close to 100 organizations across Canada, just because of that genesis of starting the partnership, seeing that it's successful, and then showing people that it's successful. So when a person tries to bring up the stereotype like, oh, Black community can't work together, I don't know about that, because when you're looking at what we're doing, it's actually partnerships and we're working together. So miss me with that we can't work together. I'm showing you that we can, and I'm asking you to join us and get rid of that stereotype and actually partner up. So piece by piece, one at a time. If it takes a while, it takes a while. Go through the process and allow us to work together. And I mean, right now, a lot of times I'm thinking to myself, what do we build trust with? And the only way you build trust is through experience. So if we experience doing transactions together and doing events together and building that trust slowly but surely. Now, when we're ready to do bigger projects, we have a team to attack it, and we're not doing it in silos like we've been doing for the past 50 years.
Mhm. Yes, definitely. Communication, partnerships are so important. And, I always say we shouldn't work in silos. So whether you're an organization, whether you're a sole proprietor or incorporated, you got to look for organizations and individuals that you can connect with, because, that sort of connectivity, it fuels the creativity and innovation that you can have in your business and your organizations. I know we have some of our community loan fund partners on the line, and it's important for us, when I think of the partnerships that we formed there, along with yourself and others, that we're not going into this alone, that we all have the same common goal, and that is to strengthen the community that we're in, and to help help individuals and organizations. So, we have the same shared vision and mission, and, we got to work towards that. So Ryan, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us. Don't go anywhere, because there are some more questions for you that we're going to have a little bit later on. But I now want to move to another entrepreneur, Dion Francis. Dion, you heard from Ryan and in the work that he's doing, and particularly around the education piece and, working with entrepreneurs. And, I remember when you started your business. Can you tell us a bit about your business and why you became an entrepreneur?
Thanks for having me, Susan. I started Blueprint Pathfinders Inc. in 2016. We are a fast-paced, growing coaching and development firm here in Toronto, and we specialize in restoration of the natural skill sets for the purpose of life enhancement and stabilization. Why did I start this company? I believed, well, it was in my blood. It was from day one. You would sit in an office, but you would dream about the day you would be in your company. You would be operating your business. And I decided to step out. It was a little bit of an unfortunate situation due to a surgery. But during that time, I just thought it was the best time to launch out and do what I know I was meant to do. So by doing so, I started Blueprint and started developing coaching programs to assist from professional immigrants to organizations from a HR standpoint. What is that? Businesses, we look at products and services as being one of the most important or the most valuable entity of most companies' possession, but it's truly your employees. And I began this business with the intent to transform lives, stabilizing lives. And by doing this, it's one of the best decisions that I've made. I knew I had something to offer, and I stepped out in one of the most challenging times of my life, and I just did it.
Great. And I think that's often the times when we start businesses, when we may not feel like we are at our best, but, that's when we really get going. And thank you for sharing that. We heard from Ryan on why he established the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. And to sum it up, many reasons were there were lack of access access to capital, access to resources for Black entrepreneurs, and more. What are some of the barriers that you had to overcome as a Black entrepreneur? And, what has inspired you to keep going?
For starters, I would tell the truth is I had to get beyond self-perception. When I first started, I thought I was confident. What it required of me as an entrepreneur, it was what I needed way beyond where I was. So I really had to work on self-development. And here I am in the business of self-development, thinking I've got it together, and recognizing you don't. So I had to make that journey. So even that which I offer today is very much a life lesson that I'm sharing with others who are in the same boat, who are starting or who are in the process. By wanting to, seeing other people succeed, it helped me to make that transition in my life, because it was lessons that I had to learn. I would say I had to get over the stigma also of being a Black business owner. There is an undertone to the value of what we bring to the table. And in the self-development, I had to come to a place of understanding my value that I bring to the table. And it's not about a Black woman stepping in a boardroom or a company or before a client. It's about someone who is competent, capable, and have something relevant to offer. So I believe there's a lot of personal development that you must go through in order to deal with the stigmas and the resistance that will eventually confront us. Because the truth is, it's there. And it's not about sitting down and taking it or stepping back, but it's about strengthening yourself in order to overcome them.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That was a very vulnerable piece. And, when you talk about our value as Black entrepreneurs, what would you say to other entrepreneurs in terms of knowing your value?
Knowing your value, you have to truly believe that what you have to offer has a relevance. And the reality is that relevance will always have a price tag attached to it. Step into step on the stage with the mindset that you are going to offer or to present, and not that you're going to prove. I am not trying to prove that I'm good. I'm aware that what I have is relevant. What I do it well. I do it extremely well. Tell yourself that you are numbered among the best, and do the work to be the best at what you do. So yes, I would tell them to work on you. You're the cornerstone of your business, and make sure whatever you put out there, you can stand behind it and be proud. The value is a very intricate part of us stepping out there and demanding our worth.
Yeah, I'm so touched by that, Dion. That was great. You're a great inspiration, and I want to thank you for sharing that. And I think, what you just said, it doesn't just apply to entrepreneurship, but it applies to all of us, whether we're in a company, an organization, it doesn't matter, what you said about these values, it rings through for all of us. So again, thank you for sharing that. When we established the Alterna Community Microfinance Program over 20 years ago, there was a gap in the financial sector, when it came to providing access to underserved communities. As a participant in that program, what did that initial loan mean to your business, and what impact have you experienced as a result?
I remember meeting you for the first time. I was actually in a program, and I was making a pitch for my business. And interestingly, it wasn't the business I'm doing today. And I remember the first time I stepped into Alterna. It was, you guys were absolutely warm and so welcoming that it kind of took the edge off of the fear of, I'm not prepared, because I will be honest, I was not ready to start the business. Circumstances occurred and I decided to do it. it was great that when I stepped in there and when I was approved, I remember sitting down thinking, someone is there with me. Alterna provided me with pretty much my foundational seed. That's what I call it. And I was able to get from equipments to softwares and so forth that I needed for the business. But most of all, there was a confidence knowing when you walk in there, someone else could see and hear the dream. And you're not the only one that's envisioning this idea. And it made it so much more tangible with the seed foundation funds that I got, that I was able to step out and do what I did. And I was actually able to change and touch people's lives, which in return, I refer other business people that I encounter, other business people I coach, I'll tell them, go to this bank, to this credit union. There is such a personal relationship that you get from being a part of Alterna that I have never experienced it anywhere else. So the resources that I got at the beginning, I can say you guys are definitely there holding my hand through the baby steps. And you're still there.
Wow, thank you. And it's really great to hear that that loan provided you that initial support that you needed to get started and to see your dream and, you know, to work through your self-fulfillment. I just want to touch on the Black family a little bit because, you know, I always say, you know, the access to capital we provide is not just for the individual, but again, you know, for households. How would you say your business and even the loan has helped you in your own Black family?
Economic empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
destiny control, and definitely community enhancement. Wow. It gives me and my family, there are things that I can do with my family today. There is an independence and a support structure that it has provided me that if I was doing a 9-to-5, I would not be able to do. Mm-hmm. There are elements of paying forward that I'm doing right now that I would not be able to do where my family is concerned. And we sometimes take that lightly, but there are things that we can do when we are in business for ourselves, when it's progressing, when it's developing, even in the development phase, that if we really pay attention, we realize what we are to our families or we can do for families, it would never have happened if we had not taken that step.
Thank you again. Last question for you. Do you have any advice for Black entrepreneurs starting a business today?
Lots.
I can't wait to hear.
I actually thought about that over and over last night, and be conscious of what you bring to the table. And again, it comes down to the whole value aspect and of what you have. There is a value to it. And when we can identify the value in what we have, we can command our worth. Mm-hmm. Money will pursue relevance. But if you don't think you're relevant, you will always be pursuing money. And that's a very long and hard run. That's a lifetime marathon. So whatever we're doing, develop something that is relevant to the time and the space that you occupy. Don't just do business for doing business sake. Establish a relevant entity in where you are and what you're doing. Be of an excellent reputation. Let the reputation that precedes you be one that is blemishless. Make sure we can stand by our word, be focused, be authentic. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. And don't ever think your journey is just about you. Someone went ahead of us and paid forward with their lives. Someone took a stand that we are able to incorporate or register a business. So always think about, what am I doing for the generations to come?
Yes.
So always think of paying forward in whatever you do, and be honest about it. Just tell the truth.
Wow, very powerful. This is great advice for anyone starting out. And, even as we progressed in business, and it was really great to hear your story on what entrepreneurship means to you. So thank you again for sharing. I'll come back to you with a few other questions a bit later. So let me now move to Ushnish. When I thought of you, Ushnish, as a panelist, you bring so many different perspectives as an entrepreneur, someone in the social economy sector, and as an academic person. So I'm really curious to hear, a lot more from you today. As co-founder of Generation Connection, can you tell us about the business and the work that you're doing with underserved communities, and why is that important?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Susan. Yeah, so Generation Connection is a collective social enterprise, and we develop and deliver entrepreneurship education for underserved communities. We're an Alterna member. One of the gaps we identified when we were doing initial research is that most of the entrepreneurship programs that are available don't support a whole range of business types. So most entrepreneurship programs out there kind of serve the single entrepreneur, single bottom line, heropreneur kind of model. And we thought there's a gap in terms of nonprofits and cooperatives and social enterprises and other kinds of organizations that are not being served well by existing entrepreneurship programs. And the second gap that we identified is that every organization, whatever the form is, we think it has a social impact, an environmental impact, a cultural impact. And if we kind of build these in at the entrepreneurship stage, we ask the right questions at the entrepreneurship stage, we'll build better businesses, businesses that are solving social problems rather than creating more, businesses that are more environmentally sustainable and more culturally appropriate. So those are the two gaps we found in the existing entrepreneurship space. And so we've done conferences in conjunction with academic institutions. We've done workshops. We've done kind of more lengthy programs for different communities and different organizations. Yeah.
Great, thank you. When I think of the businesses we serve, whether they're sole proprietor or social enterprises, nonprofit, there's that alignment of, when we think about underserved communities, I hear Dion talk about her business, and, she has a give back element to it. And the social economy through the nonprofit and the cooperatives, that's another piece where we really need to look at more and flesh out, because, it can generate mass, it can do a lot more. So, I can't wait to hear more about that as we move on. My next question is a bit of a hot topic these days, and it's about data. And, I keep hearing data matters and race matters, and there's a correlation, between them. But I actually haven't seen a lot of data coming out of Canada on Black entrepreneurship, particularly around the wealth gap and the Black families. And I think any data, that would be in the infancy stage. What do you think we need to see? What is missing? And what would help us to learn more about being economically underprivileged?
Yeah, so the majority of entrepreneurship programs in Canada, whether they're government funded or not, don't collect disaggregated race-based data. And that's a big gap in our understanding of who the entrepreneurship programs are serving. More importantly, who they're not serving. Anecdotally, those of us who are working in this space or looking at this space know who are the underserved communities. In Canada, it's Black and Indigenous. You walk into any entrepreneurship incubator, accelerator, yes, there's diversity, but you can tell who's missing. So in some cases, some organizations will collect, or even government departments will collect and publish some diversity data, but they'll lump things into this visible minorities category, which washes out a lot of differences among different communities. Again, I'm gonna be very blunt and direct, saying it's Black and Indigenous communities that are not being served well by entrepreneurship programs. There's all kinds of anecdotal data, stories from entrepreneurs, story after story after story that has been coming through. But there's been that reluctance to collect, and even if you collect, publish that data on entrepreneurship program, who's being served and who's not being served. So that's a big sort of missing piece right now.
Mhm. I really hope we can get towards, you know, entities, organizations starting to think about this. You know, I know in the federal announced Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, which we're part of, you know, they are looking at building out this ecosystem knowledge hub. So, you know, I'm hoping an entity like that, you know, is going to start creating and collecting this data. And also, hopefully, we're not just going to rely on that, but, you know, we will all start contributing as well. Now, you know, we have a few slides from you, which can explain a bit more about what's going on in the data in terms of what's missing and what it looks like, particularly around the tech sector.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I want to start, you know, show those slides and have you go through them in the next 10 minutes. And, you know, talk about the data and then move on to the policy piece that you think is necessary. And then we can look at the forms and tools that we need in the sort of social enterprise, cooperative, and social economy space that can really sort of change the narrative and how we think about race and closing, you know, the wealth gap. So I'm gonna let you go through the slides now.
Thanks so much. And I hope you can see the slides.
We can see them. I also just have to say, you know, when you're moving on to the next, just say next so we can sort of advance that slide for you.
Yeah. So the first slide showing there is research done by the Brookfield Institute for Innovation. And this is Canadian data, by the way. Don't think this is US data or anything like that. And it's showing kind of the tech sector in particular, a sector I'm familiar with. And the point being made here is that in terms of generational wealth, this is where a lot of wealth is being generated in the tech sector through tech jobs. You know how COVID exacerbates existing inequalities? Most people working in tech were able to work from home. They didn't lose their jobs. And it's one of the areas that, in fact, demonstrated growth throughout the pandemic. But what's interesting about this data is it divides kind of by ethnic group and by gender. So a couple of trends you'll notice. One is, if you see on the left-hand axis, average pay in the tech occupation, and on the x-axis, average pay in non-tech occupation. Like for every single group, maybe with one exception, Japanese women, people working in tech make more money than people not working in tech, right? So that's one conclusion from this side. If you want to grow financial wealth, look at tech jobs, look at the good jobs. The other observation, if you look at light blue being female and dark black being male dots, there's a gender gap. You know, women get paid less in most sectors. In tech, it's particularly problematic across, like, doesn't matter kind of what group you're looking at, right? So, and I'm going to focus today, I'll focus on a couple of the data points there. The Black women and Black men, and they're kind of at the middle towards the bottom. And that's being the point that, hey, even Black men and women who are in tech, yes, they make more money than people not in tech, but A, there's a gender gap between Black men and women, and B, that they're not in the middle, they're kind of towards the bottom. Even within the tech sector, even within those well-paid jobs, there is a wealth gap, an income gap that is kind of perpetuates, right? Next slide, please, Susan.
Great.
Okay, so the next slide, what it shows is on the left-hand side, participation rate in tech occupations, and on the x-axis, it shows average pay in tech occupations. And again, a reminder, this is Canadian data. Like we look at all this data and think it's kind of from the US. No, this is Canada, right? And again, you're seeing, importantly, participation rate. If you, in this slide, the black dots are female and the light blue are male. If you look at the black sort of individuals, you see a black dot for females at the bottom towards the middle, and then a blue dot for black males towards the middle again, but slightly higher. So the participation rate between men and women across all groups, more men participate in those high-paying tech jobs than do women. Even within groups, there's that gap between men and women across every group. And again, today I'll focus on the kind of data points for Black individuals, that Black men make more money than Black women. Black men participate at a greater rate in tech jobs than Black women. So there's all kinds of systematic barriers we can maybe talk about in the Q&A, but since we're talking today about wealth generation, this is one area where wealth is being generated, and that gap is increasing, being perpetuated rather than being closed. Next slide, please, Susan.
Great.
So a lot of this is again a different survey. This is from Mars a couple of years ago, and they asked kind of different groups, and there's only 4 categories here: white, Asian, Black, and other. And I know the colors are a bit difficult to see, but essentially the lowest bar is the Black individuals, right? So Black individuals felt they least included in the kind of high-tech startups that are most of the constituents of Mars, and were part of the survey. Black individuals felt the least belonging. So there are a lot of cultural issues within organizations. So it's not just a question. A lot of people kind of say, okay, so we just need to do better on our marketing or recruiting sort of for Black individuals. You have to fix the internal culture in terms of belonging and inclusion and other issues as well. So there's a lot of internal work to be done within organizations, and it's just not kind of about adding bodies. So, and this is, I'm familiar with the tech sector, so I know where to find the data, and I'm presenting this, but I'm sure this dynamic exists across multiple sectors in terms of inclusion and belonging. Next slide, please.
And I think this next slide, you will go to the policy piece that we need to think about, right?
Yeah. So I've been pointing out kind of issues and problems and gaps. So you say, okay, so what do we do? That data piece, we need to address that now. We need to publish that data in every entrepreneurship that program that exists, disaggregated by race and gender. I've just said a few data points that I've kind of found that are publicly available, and even that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Identify those barriers Black entrepreneurs have in entering those programs, and benefiting from those programs, graduating from those programs, and what are the long-term outcomes. Include, if you want to broaden out the people coming into entrepreneurship programs, you need to broaden out the types of entrepreneurship, include those social enterprises, nonprofits, cooperatives. You need, in those programs, the program leaders, the presenters need to be diverse. If you want to have Black entrepreneurs, you need to have presenters and leaders in the programs who are Black entrepreneurs themselves. And a lot of people come to me and say, okay, we can't find enough Black entrepreneurs to present or to lead the program. Well, you're not looking at nonprofits and other organizations. There are plenty of leaders out there today existing that you can invite to be presenters and leaders in these programs. Essentially change don't try to kind of, a lot of entrepreneurship programs kind of bring in people and fit the person into a particular entrepreneurship mold. I would say turn that around, change the entrepreneurship programs to serve community needs as a longer goal. And that's kind of figure out what the needs of the community are, what the needs of the individuals in the community are, and then change the entrepreneurship program rather than, taking a program and saying, hey, so-and-so, group or community needs an entrepreneurship program. No, it's the other way around. How do we change our entrepreneurship program to accommodate the needs of the community? Next slide, please, Susan.
Right.
Okay, so and finally, maybe you touched on this. So the social enterprises, nonprofits, cooperatives, they are a critical part of our economy. They are multiple bottom line organizations. So when we're talking about building wealth, let's not only think about financial wealth, but other kinds of wealth, right? Environmental, political, cultural, social wealth. And that's what these organizations bring. These organizations build on those kinds of assets in communities. Many of these organizations, nonprofits, social enterprise, cooperatives, are led by racialized communities, many by Black men and women. Majority of nonprofits, for example, in Canada are led by women, right? But we don't, if we're not supporting nonprofits, then essentially we're not supporting a lot of women leaders, a lot of racialized women leaders in our communities. So yeah, maybe the bottom line there in terms of these other types of organizations is that they bring that balanced and broader type of definition of wealth in communities, which goes beyond financial to social, environmental, cultural, political, and maybe I'm being a little repetitive here, but these organizations are not supported in most entrepreneurship programs. So I think that was the last slide I had, Susan.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
it was. Thank you so much. That was very interesting in understanding the role of the social economy and the different types of business tools cannot be overlooked when we think about the entrepreneurship piece and what it looks like in order to meet the needs of the community. We can't just try to fit everything into this box. We have to look at what are the community needs. So thank you. And I think that's really a good segue now into, talking with Melanie, our final panelist. And I think I left you for last because, you have some innovative ideas that could be a game changer for Black entrepreneurs. So let's start with, what you are currently doing. So if you could tell us what your work is at Startup Canada and, and why you founded the Peel chapter.
And it's actually a real honor to be here today with everyone. Incredible panel so far. So my work with Startup Canada started off with volunteering. I saw an ad to volunteer, and I had just finished a contract with a large advertising firm. And I wanted to give back into the community and taking some of that knowledge, what I've learned in broadcast, and just really put that back into the ecosystem. So I answered an ad, and then I spoke with Victoria Lennox. She's the co-founder of Startup Canada. And I said, well, she's like, what can you bring? And I said, well, I know about design and ad, and I can do social media. She's like, okay, let's start here. So, and that's how I actually started through social media. And having progressed through the organization, ended up being their VP of Communications and Partnerships. And throughout the journey of that, there was so much learning in that. I was able to travel, represent Canada globally. I was able to gather information and see how the ecosystems and cultures worked across the world. And, some of the places, like I went to Mexico, and people would say, oh, it's a third world country, don't worry about it. And I can tell you, when I got to Mexico City, probably about 4 years ago, had an opportunity to go into one of their large banks, and they had several floors of innovation to serve the underserved, people who didn't want to go to a bank. They didn't feel like, I don't trust the bank to put my money in there. So they were able to send money, they were able to receive money via their cell phone. And when you look at that, and I thought, okay, so where's Canada on the map compared to this? And I'm like, so you're saying, I really have to laugh about it, because every time I hear the word third world country, I think you have no idea. You really need to get out of your zone and go elsewhere to look. And so I decided, when I moved out of Toronto, I moved into Peel Region, and I kept going back to Toronto to say, well, I need to find resources. How can I do this? How can I do that? And I was like, there must be something out here serving entrepreneurs. It can't be just by itself like this. So I reached out to one of the counselors in Brampton office, Councillor Bowman, and I said, well, you know what? is there anything out here to serve entrepreneurs? They said, yeah, there's an entrepreneur center. I'm like, really? Where? And he's like, in City Hall. I'm like, in City Hall. So I actually went into the building. I was like, are you kidding me? So you mean to tell me I walk past this thing every day? I drive past this thing every day and have never noticed the sign in the window. So I went in and approached the manager at the time, Denise McClure, to say, well, this is what we want to do in the ecosystem here. It's really about supporting entrepreneurs and supporting other companies that support entrepreneurs, other organizations. We're not here to take anything away from anyone. So I have to make that very clear, because when we first started off, I did experience some hostility from different organizations to say, well, are you coming in to take government funding away from what we're doing? And I was like, no, we're not taking government funding. We're not taking anything away from you. We're actually here to empower you and to help you. And so Brampton Entrepreneur Center, they were the first that really jumped on board for us. And we still do many programs with them today. We did a finance boot camp, believe it or not, was one of the first things. And it was sponsored by Intuit Canada. And all the programs that we've ever put on, they're always sponsored, because we don't receive funding. So everything that we do, it's really to go and knock and ask for donations or ask for funding to say, can you help us to put on this program? And we really want to make sure that we're hitting the underserved. And when I say underserved, I'm talking about BIPOC, I'm talking about the entire community, especially a focus on women and single fathers. Most people tend to forget about single fathers. So I always include them when I have a conversation. People are like, single fathers? I'm like, yes, they exist. And many of them, they take care of their children better than some women. So you need to understand that. And that's how really Start Appeal came about. So Ryan's on as well. And Ryan is also one of our community partners. So we partner with everyone to make sure that if we see a gap in the ecosystem, we see a need, where we would look at it and say, okay, how can we help someone here that needs to do something? And that's where we come in to really try and fill that need. And we're still collaborating with many more right now, and we're always out there looking for others to collaborate with.
I want to move to the next question, just because we're so close to the time, and I want to get these ones in, because I think you bring some great perspectives with these next few. You know, we heard Ushnish talk about the tech sector. And I think I saw a smile on your face there. But, you know, when we think of wealth creation for entrepreneurs, you know, it can often depend on the industries that they are in. How does the type of businesses we start affect how we succeed? And how can we help entrepreneurs move from low revenue models to a more profitable industries? And do you have any tools or resources that, you know, they could use? And I just want to keep in mind that, you know, we've got I have about 5 minutes left with you.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll be fairly quick about it. I think when we talk about low revenue is, it's really a tag. I think any tech can be incorporated into anything that you do. It could be incorporated into hairdressing, restaurants. It doesn't matter what it is. It's how you use tech. Like about 5 years ago, we tried to put a digital transformation piece together, Startup Canada, to empower anyone that's running a business to adopt digital means. And now we're in the state where everyone needs to be digital. I think that's where one of the key things is. It's just, you need to empower people more to move on to tech. It's very easy to code. Children learn how to code a lot faster than most people. And then it's really adding that piece to it. Anything at all is possible. And financial literacy is also another key part of that. Anything to do with fintech can be done by anyone here. I'm making it really short, Susan. So
Great.
I'm rolling
Thank you. And great insight. You know, when we think of a more equitable economy for Black entrepreneurs, what are some new ways of investing in entrepreneurship? And I know we had conversation around this, particularly around the cooperative model and the community buy-in that could sort of help achieve this purchasing power.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think what most Black entrepreneurs need to do, they need to look beyond the smaller offerings. When you run an organization and there's 3 other individuals that you know that they have a business and you can all pool together and go in for a bigger RFP, I suggest you do so. That is the only way you're going to put yourself out there and make a name for yourself. Combined power is what you need to leverage it. You need to leverage that so you can get to the next level. Because if you don't, you're going to constantly say, well, I don't know, I don't really fit that. It's like going for a job, even though you don't meet all the standards for it. You need to try it. You need to go ahead.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And, this is about the longevity of entrepreneurs. When I think of their financial futures, too often they kind of get caught up in this day-to-day running of their business. And, before they're aware, the time has passed and they're not in a financial position as, time goes on. When we add things like building wealth and generational wealth, it becomes a hurdle. What do you think needs to be done to break through this barrier? So we're not just with the day-to-day business, but we are focusing on, the big picture.
I think we need to create maps. I think you need to create goal-oriented maps. And that is also part of those who have gone before and successful. They need to turn around and reach their hand and pull up the next person. So whatever you've learned, lessons learned is one thing. Whatever you have, and you can take that. Mentoring and sponsorship is a big thing for me, that if you have gone to a stage where you can help the next person, you need to do that. It is your right. It's not just a right, is you are obligated to do so, because everyone else helped you to get to where you are. Whether you can say, well, I did it on my own, that's not possible. You could not have done it by yourself. There was always someone there to help you. And I think that's part of where it is. And to break that barrier of generational wealth gap, it's through financial literacy, but it's also through sponsorship. Sponsorship is key.
Thank you.
I've shortened it really short, so sorry.
No, and that's fine. It's to the point. You want to pull that person up next with you, pull them up, and education is, I heard it from everyone here that how important that is. So thank you for sharing those insights, and I want to thank all of your panelists. And I think, there's so much more that I could dig deeper on with you guys, but we want to give our audience a chance to ask questions. I hope our audience have been utilizing the chat room. If not, go ahead, and if you have questions for our panelists or in general, please go ahead, take a moment and put them in there, so we can ask for you. And while we're getting to those questions, I'll give the audience a chance to do that. I do have, a final question, and it's really around, this summer, when we think of things like the killing of George Floyd and others, the protests around the globe, globally, the Black Lives Matter movement, it brought so much to the forefront. For me, it was really a bag of mixed emotions. At times, I felt like it was an awakening. I understood allyship and really what that meant and the importance of that. I became more bold, and I think that's why I'm here today doing this session. And, those are just a few things for me. So as an entrepreneur, were you inspired by the Black Lives Movement last summer? And what impact do you think that it will have for future generations? And anyone can answer. I hope to get an answer from all of you, but we'll open it up to our panelists.
I think for myself, what I gained from it was that it was true to your point, it was an awakening. But one of the things that also brought to the forefront was there's a lot of programs, there's a lot of opportunities for Black entrepreneurs that are out there, but they seem so hidden that if you don't know someone within the system, you do not have access to it. And I think now, because you see the companies putting their hands up saying, hey, we're doing this, you can get funding from us. It's a little bit more visible now. Whereas before it was kind of like, okay, well, it regressed and then the funding dissolved. They didn't need it, so it went back into profit or whatever it may be. There is a mandate to do that and to share that wealth and to put that out there. So
great,
that's what I
you.
garnered.
Ryan?
Yeah, I feel like I'm of two minds with that question, because it put a spotlight on the Black community, yes, but then it also caused a lot of scurry work, like people just trying to show that they support the Black community, so they'll throw out anything. So what I really was encouraged by is that the people that were already doing the work, they then got a bigger spotlight. And when people were asking them questions, they had something of value to say, like, hey, this is what I've been working on, and this is how you can support me. When the spotlight was put on a person just trying to put something together really quickly, when you dig deeper, it would fall apart. So hopefully soon, a lot of the people that were just trying to scurry together and show that they care about Black people, for me, will be exposed as they really didn't have anything of substance. And the people that were already doing this work, and that's again, like with Alterna Savings, they were already working with ACBN and other organizations. So when the spotlight was put on them, they could present something of substance, 20+ year microfinance program, 100+ years of banking expertise. When other people just tried to put something together really quickly, the spotlight really, they imploded on themselves. So, and I'm not going to call out any other banks. I'm going to keep
Don't
it
do that.
civil.
Don't do that. Thank you. Dion, you're on mute.
Dion's on mute.
It might help if I take it off, eh? I think it ripped the Band-Aid off a major problem, a major wound that was in the system, and it was festering. What I see, and I do hear what Ryan is saying, how everyone is now jumping in to say, hey, I've got something here. My thing is maximize and utilize all that is being put out there, regardless of when, how, and why. The fact of the matter is that it should have been there. It should have been there. And now that it is there, we need to utilize it, maximize it to the best of our abilities, and really establish a stronger foundation in our business community, within our families, social structure, utilize it to the max, as much as we can get out of it. Because at this point, it's irrelevant. It no longer matters that it doesn't matter the why they're doing it at this point. It's the fact that it should have been there.
Great.
So now let's use it and make sure it stays.
Thank
and
you.
expands. Yes.
Yeah, we got to grab it and build it. And I'm going to go to Ushnish, and then we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just quickly mention some resources in case people aren't familiar. As Ryan mentioned, not only did the events of the past year spotlight existing initiatives, but they also spurred new initiatives. So the Black Opportunities Fund is one of those newer initiatives. Then the Black North Initiative, which has been around for a while, maybe again a newer initiative for those of you looking for mentorship is the Onyx Initiative by Wayne and Nigella Purbu, a Black tech entrepreneur. And for those of you in tech, there's the Black Professionals in Tech Network led by Likan Olawai. So those are just some resources that have that some of them were existing before the events of last summer, and they've gained a spotlight, but also some of them are new and growing. So I would join them, sign up for the newsletter, and support them.
Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing those resources. We have one question, and I might be the one to answer this, but it's around the federal government offering loans for Black entrepreneurs. What would be better for early stage startups? Would it be grants? Is there any discussion or views to the federal government doing this? So we all know the federal government announced the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund back in September. Alterna Savings is at the table, working through the logistics of how this is going to roll out. It's a program with loans up to $250,000. You know, at one point it said it would have been 25,000 to 250K, but could very well start at the smaller loans as well, because, you know, as Ryan mentioned, there is a gap in the marketplace in Canada for smaller loans. So, you know, seeing that. We don't have any dates on when this program is going to roll out. I believe we're getting very close in the discussions and what it's looking like, but no dates to report as yet. So we will keep you informed. If you want me to keep you informed, you can email me, and I'll get one of my colleagues to put my email address in the chat, and we can keep you abreast of, developments with that program, when it's ready to roll out. I don't see any other questions. So I think I do see one more, and it says, how do we motivate trust in minorities in order to get to the next level? Is there an organization to help with that? So it's general, so anyone can go ahead and answer that.
I'd like to address that, Susan.
Thank you.
Trust is something that begins with you, and it begins with me. It begins with each and every one of us. And integrity is a major issue and has been, and I'll be honest, a challenge in our community. When we do business, we must stand behind what we're doing. We must be true to what we say we're doing. And trust is built when honesty takes a forefront. When you say what you're doing, when you do what you say you're doing, and it's at the utmost quality, I will trust you to come back. I will be your repeated customer. I will be that loyal customer. And we need to build loyal brands.
Great, thank you for that. I have one other question, and this is the last question we can take, and it's for Ushnish. In your experience, are there any examples of what types of different entrepreneurship programs that Black entrepreneurs are looking for?
Yeah, so Black entrepreneurs, like any other entrepreneurs, are looking for a variety of entrepreneurship programs, starting from the most common kind of private business model to more group-based cooperative models. And like I mentioned, we're finding that they're less supported in the group-based models. We have right here example of Ryan, looking for like a social enterprise, start off with that individual, entrepreneur model. That's what he was looking for. Then after a few years, you're looking for a social enterprise model. So that's a variety of needs from the same entrepreneur. Some data from the States, Black MBA graduates, were asked, okay, what kind of business are you going into? So others said, okay, financial sector or consulting, whatever. But the Black MBA graduates, many of them said, I want to help my community. I want to the type of business that helps my community. So I think there is a difference. It's not kind of all the same kind of interest. There's a lot of interest in forming the kinds of businesses that'll support community, build on community assets. And I haven't figured out how to do that easily yet.
Great, thank you. We have to wrap up. So, as we wrap up this session, I hope you found some takeaways that will help, as we all work towards equality for all. We heard a lot of great solutions from our panelists, but we know there's still work to be done in order to make sure we have wealth distribution in underserved communities. I must say that I was inspired by the conversations and actions that I am witnessing sort of during this Black History Month. And, when I think of it, at the heart of what's taking place is all about the Black family, and that was really the theme. I want to thank our panelists for their time and sharing their experience and ideas with us. Can you really quickly tell us, where we can reach you? If anyone wants to get in touch with you as a panelist, is there any information you can share, or, we can put it in our chat so that they can have it? And I'll let you put that in the chat. But before we wrap up, I want to highlight the Black entrepreneurs profile, that we have. Alterna is proud to be working alongside the BIPOC community to improve economic equality and representation. And so, for this Black History Month, we highlight 3 of our phenomenal women entrepreneurs, which include one of our own panelists, Dion Francis. Thank you, Dion, for participating. We want to bring awareness to the businesses and the contributions that they're making to our community. If you want to read more about their stories, visit our website at alterna.ca. I want to thank you all for participating, the participants, the panelists. Thanks for spending your time with us this afternoon. We will be, this is recording, so we're going to provide a copy to all the participants, who registered. And there will also be a survey that will accompany that. So again, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my pleasure.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thank you.